In the neon glow of the city that never sleeps, high above the bustling streets of the high-tech urban sprawl, Marla stirred from her slumber. Her eyes, a vivid shade of violet, blinked open with confusion. The soft, luxurious sheets beneath her were unfamiliar, a stark contrast to the modest cot in her small room back at the servants' quarters. She sat up, her head spinning as fragments of the previous night started to coalesce in her mind. A party, bright lights, laughter, and him. Her boss, Mr. Eldridge, with his enigmatic smile and deep, searching eyes. The room around her was opulent, decorated with exotic materials that were rare even in this advanced age. The walls shimmered with a subtle iridescence, and the large window offered a panoramic view of the city's skyline, its skyscrapers piercing the night like shards of glass. Marla swung her legs off the bed, her feet touching the cold, smooth floor. She was still in her uniform, the sleek, body-hugging attire designated for the domestic staff of Eldridge's estate. The fabric felt tight against her skin, too constricting for the freedom she now inexplicably found herself in. A flash of panic set in as she tried to remember how she ended up in Mr. Eldridge's personal apartment, the top floor of the massive structure that was both his home and corporate headquarters. The last thing she remembered was serving drinks to the high-profile guests, her form camouflaged against the backdrop of other alien staff who mingled silently through the crowd. Marla rose to her full height, her body slender yet strong, her skin a pale shade of blue that glowed faintly in the dim light of dawn. She approached the window, her reflection staring back at her, a maid out of place in a world of splendor. Suddenly the door to the bedroom clicked open. Marla turned sharply, her heart thumping in her chest as Mr. Eldridge entered. His presence was commanding, his usual business attire replaced by a simple robe that did little to conceal his athletic build. "Good morning, Marla," he said, his voice calm and unhurried. "I see you're up." Marla's mouth felt dry, words failing her. "Mr. Eldridge, please call me Theo here," he interrupted, stepping closer. His gaze was intense yet not unkind. "I imagine you have many questions." She nodded, her instincts screaming for her to find a way out, yet curiosity anchoring her firmly in place. "How did I get here?" she managed to ask, her voice a whisper. Theo's expression softened. "Last night you seemed out of sorts. You fainted. I brought you here to make sure you were all right." Fainted? Marla's mind raced. She had no recollection of such a thing. It was unlike her to lose composure. Her alien physiology was designed to handle much more stress. "And I stayed here? All night?" Her voice rose with a mix of incredulity and fear. "Yes," Theo admitted, his eyes not leaving hers. "It seemed prudent at the time." Marla took a deep breath, her mind swirling with questions about propriety, her job, and the unusual situation she found herself in. What would happen now? Was this a breach of conduct that could get her sent back to her home planet? Or worse, fired? "I assure you nothing untoward happened," Theo said, as if reading her thoughts. "But I would understand if you want to leave. You can go back to your quarters, no questions asked." But as Marla stood there, something within her hesitated. The unexpected kindness from this enigmatic man, the luxurious surroundings, the sheer improbability of it all. It was alluring, intoxicating even. "May I have some time to think?" she finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Of course," Theo replied, a hint of relief in his tone. "Take all the time you need, Marla." As he left, closing the door, Marla hesitated only a moment before her curiosity propelled her forward. She paced the room, her mind racing with possibilities and her heart with trepidation. The room bore the hallmarks of Theo Eldridge's personal tastes, minimalist yet elegant, with artifacts that hinted at his adventures across galaxies. On a sleek desk, a hologram flickered silently, displaying star maps and economic data that were beyond her understanding, but piqued her fascination. She approached the desk, her fingers hovering above the holographic interface, hesitant to touch yet drawn by the allure of forbidden knowledge. The data shifted, responding to her proximity, a detailed schematic of a star system unfamiliar to her, yet marked with Eldridge's corporate insignia. A soft chime sounded, and a small drawer slid open at her touch, revealing a device that resembled a communicator, but with intricate embellishments that suggested it was much more. She picked it up, the device activating at her touch, projecting a message in Theo's voice. "Marla, if you are listening to this, it means your curiosity has gotten the better of you, as I hoped it would." Marla's grip tightened. The message continued, Theo's voice a soothing cadence in the quiet of the room. "I am not just the head of Eldridge Corp, but also a member of the Galactic Oversight Committee. What you stumbled upon involves matters of interstellar importance. The device in your hand is an encoder, capable of accessing and translating any known language in the universe." Marla gasped, her eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. Such technology was rumored, speculated about in hushed tones among her people, but never confirmed. "Theo, why me?" she whispered to no one, her thoughts swirling. The message seemed to anticipate her confusion. "I've watched you, Marla. Your intelligence, your discretion, and yes, your unquenchable curiosity make you the perfect candidate for what comes next." She paused the message, her mind a whirlwind of emotion and analysis. Theo trusted her with secrets that could reshape her understanding of the universe. What did he see in her that she hadn't seen in herself? Resuming the message, Theo's voice filled the room again. "There's a gathering storm in the cosmos, Marla. A convergence of forces that threatens to disrupt the delicate balance we've maintained. I need someone who can navigate these waters with both subtlety and strength. I believe that someone is you." The message ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Marla stood motionless, the encoder in her hand, a tangible symbol of the trust and responsibility Theo had bestowed upon her. Compelled by a newfound resolve, Marla set the device down and turned toward the door. She needed answers, and only one person could provide them. With each step towards the door, her determination grew. This was no longer just about her survival or maintaining her discrete existence. She was stepping into a role that might change the course of galaxies. As she reached for the handle, the door slid open with a silent promptness, and Theo stood there, an unreadable expression on his face. "Ready to talk?" he asked, his voice betraying a hint of urgency that she hadn't detected before. Marla nodded, stepping into the corridor with him. "Yes, but I need the truth. All of it." Theo's eyes met hers, a spark of approval flickering in his gaze. "Then let's begin," he said, leading her down the hall to a room designed not just for luxurious living, but for high-stakes strategy meetings. Here, amid the stars and the infinite possibilities they held, Marla's true involvement was about to unfold. The room into which Theo led Marla was a stark contrast to the opulence she had witnessed elsewhere in his private quarters. It was utilitarian, equipped with a large circular table that held multiple holographic projectors at its center. The walls were lined with screens displaying a constant stream of data, economic forecasts, star system analyses, and covert security feeds. Theo motioned for her to take a seat at the table. As she sat, the projectors sprang to life, casting the galaxy's sectors in a 3D map that hovered above the table. Marla's eyes were drawn to several areas highlighted in red, signaling unrest. "The galaxy is at a tipping point," Theo began, his tone grave. "Several factions within the Galactic Council are pushing for expansion into territories that have been marked as neutral zones, sacred to many civilizations due to their historical and cultural significance." Marla absorbed the information, connecting it with snippets she had overheard during the gatherings of the elite. "And Eldridge Corp has been neutral so far?" she asked, her voice steady. "Not just neutral," Theo corrected. "Actively preserving the peace. But maintaining that stance is becoming increasingly difficult. There are forces within the Council that would see our influence diminished." He tapped the table, and a new layer of information overlaid the map, showing a network of trade routes, Eldridge Corp's holdings, and unknown entities marked only with question marks. "These are what I believe to be clandestine operations attempting to destabilize the regions where we have been mediating peace talks." Marla leaned forward, her mind racing as she took in the complexity of the interstellar politics. "And the encoder?" she queried, looking back at the device that seemed to hold so much potential. Theo smiled, a hint of pride in his eyes. The encoder is part of a larger plan. It can decrypt communications between these rogue elements, giving us insight into their plans and the opportunity to counteract them before they can cause irreparable damage. Marla's sense of duty solidified. What do you need from me, exactly? You will be our envoy, Theo explained. Armed with the encoder, you will go to these hotspots, under the guise of a simple maid. You will gather information, decipher plans, and help us navigate through the diplomatic quagmire to prevent a full-scale war. The weight of the task was immense, but Marla felt a surge of capability within her. This was more than espionage. It was a chance to truly make a difference, to use her unique position and skills for a greater cause. Theo, how do you know you can trust me with this? She asked, not out of doubt but a need to understand his certainty. Theo's response was sincere, his gaze unwavering. Because you have shown integrity in every choice you've made under my employ. And I suspect your own history and origins may make you more sympathetic to the cause of peace than even you might guess. Marla felt a chill as Theo hinted at secrets of her own past that she hadn't unraveled herself. There was more to her story, to her presence here, than mere chance. Prepare yourself, Marla, Theo concluded, standing from the table. You'll leave in 2 days' time for the Ceresian Belt, where your first mission awaits. I'll ensure you receive all the training and resources you need. As Theo left the room, Marla remained seated, staring at the swirling galaxy above her. The stars seemed different now, not just points of light, but places of potential triumphs and profound challenges. She was no longer just a spectator in the cosmic dance, but a participant, ready to influence the flow of history itself. The Ceresian Belt was a bustling nexus of trade and politics, its space stations swirling like leaves in a cosmic wind, each a hive of activity and intrigue. Marla arrived disguised as a simple trade delegate, her past as a maid concealed beneath layers of fabricated identities and mission-specific knowledge. Her first step into the crowded station was under the unassuming guise of a courier, blending seamlessly with the throngs of traders and diplomats. The air hummed with the dialects of 100 worlds, a symphony of commerce and negotiation. Marla's encoder, now disguised as a common datapad, vibrated softly against her side as it intercepted snippets of encrypted communications. Each vibration was a whisper of hidden agendas and covert operations. She made her way to a quiet alcove where her contact, a creature named Joran, was to meet her. Joran was a member of the Iridi, a species known for their iridescent skin and elusive nature. As Marla approached, Joran's form shifted subtly, colors rippling across his skin, signaling his cautious recognition. Marla, I presume? Joran's voice was a melodic hum, barely above the din of the station. You're bolder than I expected, Marla smiled, her confidence bolstered by this successful first contact. Boldness is a requirement in my line of work, she replied, handing over a small data chip. I trust this will help? Joran palmed the chip, his eyes flickering with a spectrum of colors. This will do more than help. It contains the coordinates of a meeting where the next phase of the expansionist plot will be planned. Their conversation was low, masked by the ambient noise of the station. Joran outlined the political factions involved, each a puppet to unseen masters who would stop at nothing to claim the neutral territories for their resources. As Marla absorbed the details, her encoder vibrated again, indicating an incoming message that required immediate attention. Excusing herself, she stepped away, reading the encrypted message on her device. It was from Theo, a warning that an unknown faction had somehow learned of an Eldritch spy in the area. The stakes were higher now. Her cover was at risk. Swiftly, Marla made her way through the crowded station, her senses heightened. She needed to access a secure communication terminal to report back and receive further instructions. As she navigated through the sea of beings, her training kicked in, each step measured, each glance calculated. She reached the terminal, a secluded unit shielded from prying eyes. Plugging the encoder into the system, she initiated a secure connection to Eldridge's headquarters. Theo's holographic image flickered to life, concern etched on his features. Marla, you need to move to the secondary objective immediately. It's no longer safe for you at the primary rendezvous, Theo instructed, his voice urgent. We've arranged for extraction from the southern docking bay. Acknowledging with a nod, Marla disconnected and melted back into the crowd. Her mind was a whirl of tactics and pathways, each step towards the docking bay calculated to avoid suspicion. The encoder, now more than just a tool, felt like a lifeline in her grasp. As she neared the docking bay, another vibration from the encoder alerted her to a nearby presence, an agent of the faction seeking to expose her. Her pace quickened, her eyes scanning for the exit, for the ship that would take her to her next destination, where the next piece of this intricate puzzle awaited her unraveling. The galaxy held its breath as Marla, once a humble maid, now a pivotal player in the silent war for peace, stepped aboard the vessel. The doors hissed shut behind her, sealing her within and rocketing her towards her next confrontation in the star-studded expanse. As the vessel cut through the cosmic sea, Marla stood by the viewing port, her reflection superimposed on the sprawling canvas of space. Stars blinked like distant lighthouses, guiding the way through the dark. She turned from the window, her focus shifting back to the mission. The silence of the ship offered a rare moment of introspection, her thoughts reverberating with the magnitude of the conspiracies unfolding. The ship's AI, a discreet voice named Alara, chimed softly. "We are approaching Tenebris Station, Miss Marla, preparing for docking procedures." Tenebris Station, orbiting a planet shrouded in dark storms, served as a clandestine meeting place for those who preferred dealings away from prying eyes. Its reputation was as dark as the swirling clouds beneath it. Marla's hand brushed the encoder clipped to her belt. She had downloaded crucial data before leaving the Ceresian belt: coordinates, encrypted meeting logs, and shadowy hints of a weapon capable of destabilizing star systems. Her mission was to infiltrate a gathering of key players involved in the expansionist agenda. Disguised as a tech merchant, Marla disembarked into the station's dimly lit corridors. Her eyes adjusted to the low light, catching the subtle cues of the station's inhabitants: furtive glances, guarded postures, and the omnipresent hum of concealed weaponry. She found her way to the meeting room, a nondescript chamber with a table surrounded by figures cloaked in shadows. Each participant was a high-ranking official or a rogue operative, their identities masked by digital scramblers. Marla took her place, her own face obscured by a holographic veil. A figure at the head of the table began the meeting, his voice distorted. "We are at a pivotal moment. The zones are ripe for acquisition. We must act before Eldridge and his peacekeepers anticipate our move." Marla's encoder buzzed silently, capturing every word, deciphering the encoded languages of the diverse conspirators. She remained silent, her role passive, as plans were laid bare. Schedules of troop movements, star maps of vulnerable sectors, and codes for disabling security networks. Just as the meeting reached its climax, a sharp disruption cut through the station. Alarms blared, red lights flashing. The station was under attack. Chaos ensued as the participants scrambled, their meeting interrupted by an unknown assailant. Marla seized the confusion to slip away, her heart pounding not just from the danger, but also from the critical data she had gathered. She navigated through the labyrinthine corridors of the station, the sounds of conflict echoing off the metal walls. Reaching the docking bay, she found her escape compromised. The vessel she had arrived on was damaged in the assault. Quick thinking led her to commandeer a nearby shuttle, barely managing to launch as security forces converged on her location. As the shuttle broke free from the station's gravitational pull, Marla initiated a secure transmission back to Theo. "Eldridge, this is Marla. The meeting was a success, but Tenebris is compromised. Sending data now." Her voice steady, she transmitted the trove of intelligence she had gathered, her eyes on the rearview screen where Tenebris Station receded into the backdrop of a skirmish that would soon be known across the cosmos. The shuttle's path was now set for a rendezvous point where Theo's team would debrief her. As the stars streaked past, Marla's resolve hardened. Each secret unraveled led her deeper into a web of galactic intrigue. Her role no longer just an observer, but a shaper of the interstellar narrative. Marla's shuttle docked at the rendezvous point, a discreet station hidden within the swirling nebulae of the lesser arm. The atmosphere was tense, the station's usual hum of activity now subdued, as if the weight of her recent discoveries pressed upon the very air. Exiting the shuttle, she was greeted by Theo's chief of security, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Karn. His expression was grim as he escorted her through the sleek corridors of the station to the debriefing room. Inside, Theo awaited, his usual composed demeanor replaced by a hint of urgency. The walls of the room were lined with screens displaying the decrypted data Marla had sent. Maps, codes, and faces of conspirators marked in red. "Marla, your work has been invaluable," Theo began, his voice firm yet filled with an unspoken worry. "The data you've gathered has given us much to consider. The weapon they discussed, do you believe they have the capability to deploy it?" Marla nodded. Her eyes locked on the screen where diagrams of the weapon were frozen. "Yes, they're close. The meeting confirmed that much. They lacked only a few key components, which they plan to acquire within days." Theo rubbed his chin, his gaze shifting to the interstellar map. This weapon could destabilize not just a region, but entire star systems. It's an existential threat. He turned to her, a new resolve in his eyes. "We need to act, Marla, not just to intercept these components, but to ensure such a weapon is never constructed again." Marla felt the weight of the mission settling on her shoulders. "What's our next move?" "We strike at their core. Based on your data, we've located their primary facility," Theo explained, pointing to a distant sector on the map. "It's heavily guarded, likely where they plan to assemble the weapon. You'll lead a team there." Marla's breath caught. Leading a team was not something she had anticipated. "A team?" "Yes," Theo affirmed, moving towards a table where various tactical displays flickered to life. "You've proven yourself more than capable. I trust you to make the right decisions in the field." Karn stepped forward, placing a compact device on the table. "This is a prototype EMP. It will disable any electronic security measures long enough for you to get in and out undetected." Marla picked up the device, turning it over in her hands. It was light, but she knew its potential impact was enormous. Theo's voice brought her back. "We don't have much time. You leave within the hour. Karn will brief you on your team and the operation specifics." As Karn led her out of the room to prepare, Marla's thoughts were a mix of determination and apprehension. This was no longer about spying or gathering information. It was about taking direct action, possibly changing the course of the conflict. Hours later, suited in tactical gear, Marla stood with her team in the hangar. They were a diverse group, each skilled in different aspects of combat and espionage. She looked at each of them, their faces resolute under the stark lighting. "The stakes couldn't be higher," she addressed the team, her voice echoing slightly in the expansive space. "We have one chance to prevent a catastrophe. Let's make sure we succeed." Nods of agreement met her words, the team's unity palpable in the charged air. As their vessel departed, cutting through the cosmos toward a destiny of their own making, Marla reflected on the journey from Maid to Commander. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers and wonders, but she was no longer a passive participant in its stories. She was writing her own story now, a tale of courage and conviction in the face of sprawling darkness. The stars beyond the viewport were not just points of light, but beacons guiding her path toward an uncertain yet hopeful future.